All right, can everyone see my screen? So before we go into the agenda overview, just a quick roll call from the committee. We have Jack Young.
Yep.
And then from the town, we have CJ Randall.
Yeah.
Pat Terrell. Pat's there.
Yeah, Pat is there.
And then from MJ Engineering, we have Andrew Gilchrist here and Jackie Hakes. And then from Place Alliance, we have Ian Law and Josiah Simpson. So welcome, everyone. So today's agenda, we'll start with just a brief project schedule update. And then I'll hand it over to CJ to tell us about some CFA funding opportunities and an update there. And then from there, we'll go into discussion of the additional park concepts. We have prepared some draft concepts for the other 3 parks, Ludlowville, the Barnfields, and the Lansing Center Trail. So we'll bring those up and go over anything there. And then we want to talk briefly about the public engagement coming up in the month of June, and then next steps. So with that, in terms of a project schedule update, here we are in the month of May. A couple of things of note that are circled here. The next committee meeting will be held in July, and that is because the upcoming public engagement will take place in the month of June. So you'll notice there in the month of June, the next public workshop, which will be a virtual webinar. We'll talk about that in a moment, as well as the information pop-up table, which we'll also talk about in just a moment. All right, so CJ, if you want to give us just a brief update on sort of the CFA opportunities that you're looking into, and anything else related to that.
Yeah, sure thing. Hey, everybody. Very exciting this year. The consolidated funding application is back. So that is the state's economic development, I don't know, cosmic cash machine, I guess, for lack of a better word, or the upstate Hunger Games, however you want to call it. But in any event, this is the annual opportunity, or at least it has been for the last decade or so, for municipalities, nonprofits to prepare competitive applications for funding for a variety of different projects. And in this instance, the town had put some pretty significant effort into applying in 2019 to the Environmental Protection Fund related to parks. But we were actually competing against one of our own projects that year, which was the Cuga Cliffs project, which ended up being funded, which I think was a really good thing, and also gave us the opportunity to step back and bring in MJ in place and revamp all of the concepts for Myers Park, which I think have ended up being a real improvement, and I think will put us in a really, really great position for going after funding. So this year we're going to apply for 2 separate grants, one federal, one state, one through the Appalachian Regional Commission Area Development, which is, we actually just met with a representative from Southern Tier 8 yesterday at Myers and went over some of the pre-application, and that's a $150,000 grant with an equal match, either cash or in kind. And then the Environmental Protection Fund, I think, is up to $500,000 with equivalent match. I think that's what I'm reading this year. And we're hoping to enlist MJ in place, of course, under separate agreement, of course, for technical services and support of the application to help us put an application together this year. The deadline is the last Friday in July, as always. And we hope to be notified of an award, I hope this year, by mid-December. Usually the awards are plus or minus around December 15th. So I think we're in a really good position this year. Obviously, we need to really drill down a little bit further into cost estimates. That's obviously a big part of the application. But I think we've got a lot of the or at least a skeleton of the application pretty good to go. So yeah, so MJ graciously offered to help us with that application, and I certainly would like to take them up on that CFA this year. So yeah, and if there's any questions, I'm happy to try to answer them.
Great. And it looks like Katrina just entered the waiting room, so she'll be joining us now. Yes, thank you, CJ. And after the uncertainty of the last year, it's nice to see that these funding opportunities are going to be available this year. So, are really great opportunities ahead for the town. And it looks like Katrina is joining us. Welcome, Katrina.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we just quickly went through, CJ provided us just an update on the CFA funding opportunities that the town is going to be going for. And MJ here in place are going to be assisting the town with some technical assistance to pull those applications together. So next, we'll go on to the discussion of the additional park concepts. So as you might remember, Place Alliance had pulled together the concepts for Salt Point, Myers, and the town ball fields. And so now we're looking at Ludlowville Park, Lansing Center Trail, and the town barn fields. These three have a bit less in the way of improvements. Definitely more intensive from an improvement standpoint. But with that, what we want to do today is just share these concepts with you, get any initial feedback on things to add, things to modify, that sort of thing. So I am going to stop sharing the presentation and I will pull up the concept plans. Okay, can everyone see that okay? All right. Right here. Okay, so starting with the town barn field, this is the existing condition map for the town barn field. Currently, there is no formalized parking. People either park at the town highway garage or along the side road when going here. So no formalized parking. The current facilities here are really the three ball fields at these two corners and down here, and then a larger soccer field. So this is really a multi-use field, primarily used for Little League and T-ball, but there are certainly opportunities to expand the uses here and add some improvements to help expand those uses. Some of the things we heard about was the drainage issues, kind of a wet field. So we have some improvements to address that as well. And it looks like, Pat, what are those?
There's actually 6 ball fields. That's
There are. Okay,
Oh,
so that's good.
okay.
That's good to know.
Yeah,
We'll modify that. Okay. So moving on to the there we go. So here, I'll start kind of at the top. So with letter A, we have, and in our previous conversations, there were talks about what was happening with this piece of property up here, and that it would be a good location for a parking lot. So we did include a parking area there. We maximized the size of it, so this can certainly change and be smaller if need be. But we were able to fit 42 parking stalls in that area. So that's letter A, is the formalized parking area. Letter B is a crosswalk connecting the parking area to the field, which then connects to letter C, which is the addition of a pedestrian path, which connects the different facilities that and improvements that have been added here. So following the pedestrian path, it leads to letter D, which is a proposed bathroom facility. Continuing down the path is letter E, which is a playground, followed by F, which is a small picnic area, and then G, a pavilion. In addition to these elements, we've also added a fence line here. So there is a fence here for mostly for protection for children, so they don't run out into the road, that sort of thing. We've also included the vegetative buffer here. It was noted that there was a drainage ditch in this area and that there was need for some kind of buffering there. So we've included a vegetative buffer at letter I. And then letter J is addressing the drainage and regrading of the field, something that was brought up during our stakeholder discussions. So those are the key improvements that we've noted here. Initial thoughts, reactions, things you'd like to see different?
So with the addition of those improvements along the south of the property, do we lose playing fields, Pat?
Where they have things positioned, no, we do not lose any playing fields.
Okay, would we lose them if we included at the buffer between the fields and the highway building has trees in the lawn buffer zone, but nothing in the zone on the other side of the walk, which is where people could sit under shade. So I look at those trees along that walkway just as buffered, not as, you know, something somebody would want to sit under between a sidewalk and a thoroughfare.
One thing to remember is that if you have trees near a playing field that gets fall use, it becomes a real nightmare. So
Thank
if
you.
we're going to be trees
Okay.
there, they're probably going to be evergreens, which are not typically the sort you sit under.
Okay.
So, yeah, I just want to
Um,
throw that out there.
Well, I was just wondering because you do have them on the playing field side along the walkway to the playground.
You mean these here?
Yeah.
And do you think that those, are you thinking that those should be taken out?
If we're going with the argument you don't want a lot of leaves next to your playing field, then probably, but I don't know. Pat, you have a few shade trees up on the other fields.
Yeah, the trees we have don't seem to be a problem for us. I mean, we use mulching mowers anyway, so it's not like they're a big issue for us. The only issue we have is if they shade too much and then stop the grass growth, but those are far enough out of the playing surfaces that I don't think they'll be a bother.
So you could stay with some high crown, fine leaf trees that would mulch easy, like honey locust.
Yeah.
And you could potentially add some then along the walk heading north for shade for our viewers too.
Up in this area here?
Yeah, as you go, well, yeah, somewhere around the perimeters, just to give some shade options. I mean, you don't know it, but a lot of the trees up on the other ball fields are because I pushed for shade for families who are sitting there with kids and, you know, grandparents watching. So that's why it's on my mind. So
Okay.
I'm just wondering.
Sure. Okay.
I don't want to interfere with the number of fields Pat has or the maintenance, but I'm just throwing it out.
Pat, what are your thoughts on additional locations for trees?
Honestly, the only issue I would have is so many trees around the playground, because that typically is the worst place for leaves to collect, is in a playground. So that would be our biggest maintenance issue there. I don't see the playing fields as being with leaves much of an issue. And honestly, I would put benches in between the trees that are on the east side and face them towards the field, so you could get shade there as well.
Oh, okay.
I don't see that
Yeah.
as a problem. You know, have the benches facing west, looking out at the playing fields, and the sidewalks in front.
Okay.
I mean, my concern is, having managed Newnham and Grantchester Field for years and traveled to all the soccer fields in Western New York, you really don't see deciduous trees near soccer fields in any great numbers in any facility that I've ever visited. So, I mean, and everybody's got mulching mowers. So, I mean, I think you can handle a certain number, but my sense is that, just from my experience in going all over the place, it's generally not something that's very common. I don't think it's a problem in the spring, but the soccer season runs typically till late October, and there's a lot of leaves on the ground. And if you have a stormy weekend, you can have the field covered with them. So, that
Yeah, I
was my
wouldn't-
only concern, is that it's typically not done for soccer, that's for sure.
I just thought there was a lot of trees in that area along the sidewalk to the playground. It seemed like there was a lot there, so there could be less there and maybe a few more around the perimeter that did not have heavy leaf type,
Yeah,
very small
I'd
leaf.
maybe cut the number of tree plantings in half of what you guys have there.
Okay.
If that's an actual, I mean, I'm looking at this as the drawing, not like, oh, that tree's going there, that tree's
Right.
going there.
The
So I'm not-
structure is
Yes.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah, the hardscape, the sidewalk, the playground, it all looks very nice and orderly.
Yeah, I don't want to nitpick it too much, because that's probably not a realistic number of trees there anyway, so.
Yeah, but we can reduce, we can certainly reduce the number there, make it a little bit more realistic. Okay. Other thoughts about this one?
I love the extra parking.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's perfect, because that's a kind of a dead space anyway.
Mhm.
And speaking of that, is it all right if I take a shot of this and send it off to the consultants working on the highway project, Bergman? They're coming up with site plans for the highway building renovation project. And I'm thinking that could probably actually be some kind of cool shared parking, especially because on the weekends,
Yeah.
Yeah.
it could be shared between highway and the park there. Could be very cool. So if it's okay with you guys, we'll just take a shot of this and send it along to them so they're aware. But
You
the
may have-
parking, go ahead, sorry.
You may have already mentioned it. Is there any, porta-john? What do you do about bathroom access up there, Pat?
We currently only use a porta-john.
Okay. And would that be near the parking lot, or
They
where would that be sited?
They actually have a bathroom built in. It's-
Yeah, this is, letter
D.
D is a bathroom.
Oh, that's a bathroom. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you. I missed that. Love
Mhm.
that.
Yep, and that's located there based on our discussions in the staff stakeholder meeting, that this was closer to the septic for the highway garage.
Mhm.
And so
Right,
it'll be-
for hooking up and all.
Yep.
Okay, looks great.
Hey, Andrew, I did have one quick question regarding the parking area.
Mhm.
What is this use up here? I'm forgetting now without seeing a broader aerial.
That I'm not sure about, Pat or CJ.
It's
Do you
like
know
an
if-
industrial, it's like a commercial, what kind of warehouses? I think it's Verizon.
Yeah, so
Verizon's.
here, this is a Verizon building.
Yeah,
This is all commercial storage and business. There's a couple businesses back here that are commercialized, so it's an actual road that goes all the way up.
so I guess what I was wondering, that parking lot is great. It obviously does a lot, but if that wasn't something that this, there's an existing buffer right there on their property line. It
You
might
could
be,
make it a little bigger.
might be
could-
worth having that be a double loaded aisle.
Right.
If, unless that screening is super important, but it'd be something to weigh out, because you know, you've got like a tray and a half when you potentially, it looks like you could fit 2 trays.
Mhm. Yeah.
Just something to consider.
Okay. Other thoughts? All right. So moving on to next one. So next we have Ludlowville Park. Here's the existing condition map of this one. Total property is about 13 acres, but obviously the portion in use down in this area is much smaller. Existing facilities include the gazebo, the basketball court, the playground, the pavilion, the existing parking area, which fits about 5 cars, and then the waterfall, which is one of the real highlight of the Ludlowville Park. So in terms of the recommended improvements here, because of the scale, we did do an inset map here, so we a bit zoomed in on it. So I'll zoom in on that a little further so you can see. So in terms of the improvements here, much of it remains the same, but there are some key things that I want to point out. So letter A. So starting with letter A, we did add a bathroom facility here, as well as an expanded parking area, letter B. So this goes from about 5 parking stalls to 10 with the expanded parking. So we've doubled the amount of parking. The other thing that you'll notice is, which is letter C, is that we've added in a pedestrian path that connects all of the facilities together, something that's currently not there. Letter D, we've added an overlook, an accessible overlook that's overlooking the waterfall. Something that we've also added here, which I don't have a letter for, but I will add one in, is a fence line here, sort of a protective fencing, closer to the cliff area. And then we've also added a formalized trail access to the waterfall. This is not intended to be universally accessible, but just a safer way to get down to the falls. In terms of the actual design of this trail, that's sort of to be determined at this point. This is just here just for visualization, but would require a more in-depth study of the topography here to have the proper trail type there. But we just wanted to put that in to show that a more formal trail access there.
It does tend to follow the footpath. It
Yes,
seems
yes,
to be
this follows what sort of is there now. And then letters F and G, they're sort of they're more of the forward-looking objectives. So F is explore opportunities to utilize the north part of the property in this area here. And then G is explore opportunities for neighborhood connections. And then within the document itself would be more of a discussion of those items. So initial thoughts or reactions to that?
I love the expanded parking. I think it makes the park much more useful for small events in the bathroom use. I understand the reason for the accessible path straight out to the falls, but that strip of grass, my feeling is it's best preserved as grass so people can have Frisbee and activities there and not have the path cut right up the middle of it. Maybe it could swing towards the bandstand and then over a little bit and then curve over towards the pavilion to the right and come around to the falls that way.
And you're referring to the path that goes to the overlook?
From the parking lot, yeah,
Yeah.
straight out.
So maybe,
Put a curve towards the bandstand a little closer and then swing it to the right edge of the park, up along the pavilion and then following the edge
mhm,
to the overlook.
right, so to provide more green space.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
Because the area, the green space that is to the left of the pictured path is often wet after major rain events. A lot, there's springs and stuff, so it gets very soggy there. So the path actually is in the driest, best lawn area. And I like curves, you know. I'm a landscape design person.
Okay, yeah, we can modify that.
I don't know. What do you think, Pat? You like it straight?
No, I agree with you. I would leave the open space in the middle and just, I drew the path in there. Like, I think that's probably more realistic. And then that also gives you a path to the gazebo, which we do sometimes use for a bandstand.
How can I draw?
If you go to either the top or the bottom where your zoom,
Oh, there it is.
the annotate button.
Annotate.
Yeah.
I can't click on any of those.
Um,
Anyway, what I was picturing was following the line to the bandstand, like you said, but then swinging. Yeah.
That
The
one
pi-
works.
the-
Whoever drew
the
the other
pi-
one in works too. That's because
The-
there's a couple benches on that side.
The orange one goes through a very wet area, so there would have to be a lot of work under that gravel path to keep it from sinking. So I would draw from follow the orange to the bandstand. Nope. Follow the orange to the bandstand and then curve curve it over to the right to the pavilion. So it'd be like a little S curve, and then yes, and then you could approach the falls, or even to the other side of the pavilion. You don't have to go all the way to the edge.
Okay.
yeah, we can definitely explore that. Great. Other thoughts for Leadville? Okay. So moving right along, next is the Lansing Center Trail. Here, in terms of the existing facilities, approximately 4 miles or so of trails, the gravel parking area down here, which also has a kiosk and a porta-john located at that parking area as well. In terms of improvements, again, because of the scale, we did an inset map so that it's zoomed in on this area here. So starting with letter A, we included a formalized parking area that's paved, and then included the kiosk here, which there is an existing kiosk, but we did want to include that on the map here as well. And then we've also added the bathroom facility at letter C here. In terms of other improvements, we've added the additional interpretive signage. We've kind of scattered this around different areas. These can change. You know, we've just put them in different areas along the trails and sort of the key intersections of the trails. Same thing goes for letter E. So letter E is addressed drainage for wet trails. This is something that was brought up during our stakeholder meetings about, you know, some of the trails being wet at certain times of the year. And so we placed this letter E here, but We can have multiples of those in different locations depending on where it's best suited. And I would ask if anyone has a sense for where those areas are. We can certainly move that around. And then letter F down in this area. This again was something that we talked about in our stakeholder discussions. Potential opportunities for additional parking for the trail in that area. And then letter G up here was explore opportunities for trail expansion. That was, sort of depending on what's happening on the neighboring parcels, particularly if the town was looking, at the building behind here, utilizing it as a rec center, that sort of thing. And so that would just be exploring opportunities for trail expansion. And again, that can be in a different location. Or there can be multiple of those. So those are the key improvements that we've identified here. Any initial thoughts, reactions? Yeah, Pat, it looks like you've added some of those wet spots. And
Yeah.
Right.
Pat knows where all the wet spots are. My thought was, instead of placing the bathroom directly in the view to the fields, could we jog it over into the elbow of the parking lot to the left? So it would be sited behind there's the garden with trees, and then there's some more trees. It could be tucked into those trees at the elbow, right where your arrow is.
So sort of this area here.
Up a little higher into right in there. So tuck it to the left. So it's not blocking the view from the parking lot out to the meadow and all that. We have a lot of little smaller locusts and things in there that could screen it from the little garden area and from the parking lot a little bit.
Okay.
What do you think, Pat?
Yeah, I have no problem with it being tucked over there. That's fine. I would just like to see it close to the parking lot.
Yeah, close and signage, small signage so when you get out of your car to a trail, might be a little arrow saying restroom that way or something.
Okay. Other thoughts, comments? Okay. Well, this looks good. So we'll make those modifications. We'll note the different areas for addressing the drainage. Where that current letter E is, do you want us to remove that?
Yeah, because it's actually not wet where that E is. So yeah, take
Okay.
it, please.
So remove that and those spots that you noted.
Yeah, we're also expecting, hopefully here within the next month or so, the stormwater management study for the entire area that's highlighted
Right.
Oh,
here.
nice.
So I think we'll have a better understanding of, my understanding is this area here, south east of E, or E and both E's, the E section. So that southwest kind of corner there, which I think is, yeah, just to the right, I'm sorry, yeah, just to the right of there, that big kind of square that's right there. Yeah, you got it. I guess I could just mark it up, sorry. I'm trying to explain this. It's like, guess which section I'm talking about. That will be, that's likely to be stormwater retention for the entire area, for the entire catchment
Okay.
area, probably. So we'll see what the town engineers have to say about that, and I certainly will pass that on as soon as I get it. Not that it necessarily affects the trail head area, but just kind of FYI.
Great. Other thoughts? All right, sounds good.
Is there, in the charrette, is there going to be any extended views with some dotted indicators saying where future trails, connector trails might be? Because we still have what, 4 properties between the town center land and the school. That's not that many.
Oh, for the bigger, you're talking, Katrina, about the larger connections.
Yeah,
We will be identifying at a very, very high level to make a connection between there.
mhm, okay,
But in terms of evaluating, right of way and, access and that sort of thing, we won't be going into too much detail about that.
No.
Information.
I was
that
just
you-
thinking, even just down in the lower left where there is a connection to Conlin Road, just having, a dotted arrow saying,
Future connection.
yeah, future connection.
Yeah, okay.
Just so that people down the road, board members, whoever's looking at it, they don't know the whole history of that potential. So it's helpful to have some of these things in the picture.
Great, okay.
Yeah, at least to prompt them to know that there is a potential for a connection. So yeah,
Right.
we can have that. So I'm gonna go back to,
I think this happens.
yeah, so Josiah, if you and Ian are up next, if you wanna pull up anything related to Salt Point or any of the other modifications, that sort of thing.
Yeah, we did the edits that were brought up at the last meeting. So I think we can go through that pretty quickly here. So for Myers, I mean, there wasn't that much to do. There was a discussion about charging stations and inclusion of wagons. The scale is just a little big to represent those graphically, but they are something that we think can be included and should be included. And we didn't really get a whole bunch of feedback or any changes for the town ball fields. So that's the same as everyone has seen before. Really, the highest number of comments were for Salt Point. So we heard comments that there were a willow and eastern red cedar that needed to stay near the parking lot. So we've included those trees. So they are to stay. No trees are to be cut. There's also handicap parking with an associated sidewalk to give that population a chance to access the natural area. We've moved the kiosk from the location near the parking lot back to its original location. And we made a suggestion for an alternative to the pile dividing blocks that are following the road. If you use your eagle eyesight, you might be able to see that there's a texture along the side of the road, and we recommended a wood guide rail there. And we have a couple photos of what that might look like on the next page. And then per someone's request, we got rid of all the spur trails that apparently are not actually allowed from the
so wise,
trail.
so wise.
And someone was wise to say that those will probably exist anyway. So we've taken them out nonetheless. What did get worked on but didn't end up getting changed in this graphic is the boat put in, which is letter C here. You know, we did explore a couple of ways to allow vehicles to back down there to unload boats. There is a conflict with providing a place to allow people to back down, but only back down with non-motorized vehicles. It seemed like the best way to keep motorized boats out of this section of the lake would be to just make it the way we had it, which is a drop-off lane where you can take your boat out, park, and then drag your boat, pick up your boat with your crew, and bring it to the water's edge. The back out lane seemed to have some problems with also the circulation of the path, maybe some safety issues for people to get to the bathroom if there's trucks and things backing down. We also felt like to make it tempting for people to bring larger boats that were on a trailer would be a bad idea because we're not offering trailer parking. That all said, you know, and so and then just the overall vision of the natural area is that this is a place for non-motorized boats. But you know, that all said, that whole study started because there was a request to look into allowing boats, trucks to back down to the lake. But we didn't really hear a lot of opinions that either thought that was a good idea or didn't think it was a good idea. So we would like to take the opportunity to just ask the committee again if that's actually what you want, or whether it was just an idea and we should just grease over it.
Josiah, one thing before the group chimes in, we also revisited our site photos, and the site photos did demonstrate that is really barricaded from vehicles being able to get all the way down to the lake now. So that's what sort of raised us to, raise the questions again, like, okay, what do we really want to happen here? It really kind of, we're thinking it made some sense to, emphasize that it's car tops only, and, provide an opportunity to take it off the car, go park, and then have a very short carry.
I think you guys nailed it. It's great. I love it.
Thanks, Pat. You're our biggest
I
fan.
agree. I see you also increased the turning shape of the drive, which also looks good.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm in total. I don't want any cars down there that close. I don't even like them as close as the last picture. So I'm good with it.
Sounds good.
Okay, seems like a pretty short discussion then.
All right.
Can I
Yeah.
can I ask just a couple things about this plan and the other one? Do we call out bike parking, or is that just kind of wherever we kind of want it to be?
Oh, that's
We-
a great idea. Yeah,
we
can we put
haven't-
some,
Okay. Oh, go ahead.
yeah,
we
I agree with her.
haven't in this graphic, but that is certainly a label we can put on there where we think it makes sense to do it.
Okay,
'Cause
cool.
that would be a good thing to have.
Great
Yeah,
idea.
we should have some lock up bike rack.
Nice. Just kind of, and maybe even if it's just a plain old, rack, it doesn't have to be anything fancy.
Yeah.
Just curious, just thinking of where that could go. And then Myers, if you would go back just one slide. I have a friend who's a avid well, Sharon Heller apparently is a avid stand-up paddleboarder, and there's some concern, I guess, from people that they are not going to be able to launch here, and I don't know enough about that type of paddlecraft to speak intelligently about it. So I wanted to just ask. Apparently, right now, people are just very used to pulling up to that point and just kind of going in. And I'm not saying I know this is certainly a preferred plan for a whole host of reasons, but I was just curious if there was any talking points that I could mention to folks who are.
Yeah, I mean, I think we always imagine the canoe kayak, drop off could be used for stand-up paddle boards as well, where they could just drop off their board, go park, and then, utilize that put in. And then if they wanted, they could, carry all the way down to the secondary beach zone as well and have really easy way to get in right there too.
Nice.
Or
Okay.
the easiest way is to go to the boat launch in the harbor, and if you have a heavy boat. Can you do that, Pat?
Yeah, you could. They kind of get in the way a lot of the time if they launch in the marina. That's kind of an
Okay.
issue.
Well, then, I mean, if you've ever tried to move one of those heavy canoes, that is an argument for putting that drop-off loop a little closer to that access to the stream.
I would say contingency plan, it might have to move to where that letter L is. But the L that's further to the west.
Right.
Because sometimes the creek is really low and that could be an issue. I'd really like to see them dredge that again and make it better, but we'll see. I mean, that's always an option to move it closer to that other L.
Okay, that was a comment from somebody, and then just curious, the L is where I believe that we're intending, and Pat, correct me if I'm wrong, to apply for the ADA accessible kayak launch. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, and then that is where that would go, right, in the L?
Yep.
Okay, got it. Okay, thank you. I don't know enough about this, so thank you.
It looks great.
Thank you.
And just saw you had an imagery board, correct?
Yeah, just these are an image board to show the ideas that are presented on mostly the Myers Park master plan, but also Salt Point. We put in some examples of a high tensile structure that would go in location M, which is here. And we also suggested some ideas for swings or trellis swings that could be along the promenade area or where the harbor is. So they don't have to be as structurally sophisticated as these. They could be a little simpler, like this last one here, but it's a very popular thing for people to sit on and just rock away, either at sunset or just watching the boats. So we thought that would be a really good thing to just include visually, just to get people's minds thinking about what's possible. And then down here, we have some creative seating for that promenade as well. So maybe near the high tensile structure or near the docks and things like that. There could be benches that kids could climb on or are just a little bit more interesting than your run-of-the-mill park bench. And then lastly, we include in this bottom right just some really simple guardrail options that are wood, fairly attractive. They really imply park space. We selected this one on the left because it sounded like there might be a chance that there were some extra utility poles that could be used. If not, it's just an idea to keep in mind with then this this option on the right, just showing just a timber guardrail that should be reasonably inexpensive, maybe not as inexpensive as the concrete pile dividing blocks, but definitely more attractive.
I also just in looking through the, this idea of the pavilion carts to help folks kind of bring their picnic to their perspective, pavilion. This idea just popped into my head looking at that image, that and some of the comments about the distance to the canoe kayak launches, particularly the more westerly one. They also make canoe kayak carriers, if you will, that you can, so having a couple of those by the kayak lockers as, something, another amenity, again, to counter the fact that we're asking people to, park where it's appropriate and provide more real estate to green space. That could be another thing to consider, having just a few, canoe carriers that would make it really easy for folks to get over to either of the launch areas and not have to kind of have the vehicle get that far out.
I was thinking exactly the same thing, to have a couple of carriers.
And then just one other real thing I like about the images that Josiah selected for some of that, potential seating around the marina area or some of those ideal lookout points is what's really nice about that kind of, not only is it more interesting and offers a little bit of diversity to the seating, but it also gets the eye level up. So if there's, in this case, you don't have a ton where you have railings that you have to look over, but in places that you do, this kind of seating is favorable because, typically bench height gets your eye level right in line with the railing. And so this kind of more stadium style seating, offers a little bit of a diversity, but it gets that eye level up and lets you kind of see out. It's very anecdotal, but one thing I really like about it.
Great. So any other thoughts or questions about these items?
Has anybody got a rough idea what kind of budget you're looking at for the different plans? I mean, ballpark, even 50% either way, just to see how feasible some of this really is financially.
Jack, we are in the process of sifting through. We wanted to get set in terms of the design elements, and so our next steps are to identify that, and we're advancing Myers Park a little ahead of the others because of the grant opportunities. And part of that process, once we have kind of the overall numbers, is to then prioritize and identify what the most immediate needs might be. So short answer, we don't know yet, but that is our next effort.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously an iterative process. And on some level, if somebody had come in and said, this is going to be $3 million for some plan, you might said, well, let's not go to the trouble of designing it. But yeah, I mean, I'm just curious because it is always the art of the possible in these things, and everything looks fantastic. And I look at these parks and I can hardly wait to be there. But, there's probably a reason the average town doesn't have 5 parks that look this good. Assume it's funding.
Right.
Great. All right, Ian, Josiah, anything else you wanted to add?
No, that was it.
All right, so I'm going to bring back up the presentation. There we go. So last thing we wanted to discuss with you all today was the upcoming public engagement. We brought some of this stuff up in previous meetings, but since it is coming up next month, we did want to kind of touch base with everyone. So again, the purpose of this next round of public engagement will be to present these concept plans to the public and then identify any modifications based on that public feedback. We're proposing sort of 3 different elements of this next public engagement. So the first one will be an interactive public webinar to present these concepts and solicit feedback, and then utilize the website following the webinar to have the concept plans available. It's for people to continue to look at and provide us additional feedback. If they weren't able to make it to the webinar will also be recorded, so people will be able to take a look at that if they're not available. And then we are proposing an in-person option or an in-person pop-up station on June 5th, which is an opportunity to help publicize the webinar. And we're also looking to coordinate with an existing community event, which is on June 5th. Jackie, I don't know if you want to talk about
Sure.
the pop-up.
Yeah. So we understand that there's a chicken barbecue and a lot of ball games happening on June 5th. And so in coordinating with Pat and CJ, they identified that might be a really great opportunity to have a pop-up table with the intent to help publicize, number one, the project, if folks might not be familiar with it yet, and then also to promote that public webinar at the end of June, and there'll also be an opportunity if folks want to provide any input. So that is coming up June 5th. Pat, CJ, I'll work with you guys in terms of the specific timing of when we want to do that, but I think we were going to be over near Town Hall in terms of a location closer to the pickup for the barbecue. And one of the things that we wanted to ask the committee is if any committee members wanted to offer to help volunteer, an hour or 2 throughout the time period there at the table. Sometimes what we find is that, if neighbors go by, they see somebody they know at the table, they might be more apt to stop and see what's going on. So certainly open to that if the committee feels that would be something you'd be interested in joining us for a little bit of time at the table. That would be great. We can certainly coordinate that, but that's what the pop-up is intended to do.
Sounds good.
So in terms of the schedule for that, again, the pop-up station, we're looking at June 5th for that. And then the webinar, we did speak with CJ and Pat and settled on June 22nd for the date of the webinar. And then for the following 2 weeks after that, we would present the draft concepts on the project website for people to continue to go back to and provide feedback on that. So that's sort of what we're thinking in terms of the schedule for that.
Sounds
And any questions or comments about that? Great. Okay. Wonderful. So it's an exciting next step in the process.
Yeah.
is presenting these to the public.
Did you say, I don't recall, though, you probably just said and it slipped my mind, but are we going to have an advisory committee on the 22nd, the same day as the public meeting? I don't recall.
Good question.
Yeah, good question, CJ. I think we would propose that we not hold a committee meeting on that day and instead shift it to July, and then we can share the input that we've gotten over the month of June. Jack, at that point, will have some preliminary cost estimates, and we'll work with the committee in terms of some prioritization as we pull together the master plan document. So that's what we would propose, but certainly are willing to, listen to your thoughts about that. I'm seeing some head nods.
Well,
That sounds,
I don't want to add more meetings, but July 27th is getting real late for the CFA. And I just, and I can go through this with Pat and we can do our own prioritization, of course, but if the committee would be willing to perhaps forego the June 22nd meeting and perhaps schedule for earlier in the month in July, then I can take the numbers that you all come up with and maybe meet with them independently.
Sure. Yeah.
Just an
see,
idea.
We
yeah, it's
can
fine.
numbers. We can have some numbers sooner as well. If that makes sense. But yeah, we can do an earlier July meeting, depending on what works best for the group. But
Maybe
yeah,
maybe the 6th if everyone would consider it. I hate to add meetings, but this is a big application and I want to make sure that the priorities of the committee are understood by me and the grant writers.
that would give us enough time to synthesize everything that we've heard. So we'd want to leave the kind of comment period, if you will, on the website open. We would probably do that through July 2nd, and so then we can kind of just take what we've learned there and prep that for the 6th.
Okay, even the 13th would be okay if that would be better for this committee, whichever.
This of June, you're saying, because that's a Sunday.
July.
July. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
Both of those
Either
days work for us.
7th is better for me. I'm traveling on the 5th. And this is actually traveling on the 6th.
Okay, how about this? How about I reach out to the committee and just toss out a couple dates and times, and then maybe we could just shift that June 22nd meeting to whatever that all agreed date is. Does that sound good?
Sounds good.
Okay,
Great, thank
nice.
you.
Thank you all. I hate adding more meetings, but this is an
Thanks,
important
CJ.
one.
No, that's true. Yeah, 3 days isn't really enough time to turn that around from July 27th.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sounds good. So in terms of next steps, so this will be modified, but the next committee meeting will be to be determined based on everyone's availability. And then the big next step is the second round of public engagement. And again, we'll be preparing materials for that pop-up station and getting the webinar all set. And we'll get the website ready to go for presenting those concepts. And then, we're currently in the process of developing the master plan document, but that will continue over the summer, particularly as we continue to gather the input from the public and from all of you. And so that concludes this meeting. If anyone has any other questions, let us know. But otherwise, we're looking forward to diving into the next part of this process.
Sounds cool.
All right,
That's great. Thank you all so much.
great. Well,
Thanks, everyone.
thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
Bye.